Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast, Conversations with Silicon Valley's Creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates. Hello, welcome to the Content Magazine podcast. I'm Daniel Garcia, the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates, and we're here in our sofa studio with Don Harding, who is a filmmaker, journalist, and an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, documentarian. So thank you very much for being here today. And you also have a movie that's going to be coming out this March, which is like a couple weeks from now, or a week from now, at Cinequest, and that's going to be called Bar. That's your latest kind of documentary. But let's get to that after a minute, because what I'm really kind of curious, I want to see how, because, you know, looking at your bio and all that kind of stuff, you started out as a journalist and kind of even photojournalism as well.
It's the fancy name we used to give for shooting news stories.
Yeah.
I started in TV news right out of college. I was in upstate New York, is my hometown.
What college did you go to?
Just a small two-year school, Broome Community College, and started working in TV news. I was actually doing radio when I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
So I always kind of was pulled into the arts. And then and really had a love of film. But being a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s in upstate New York, Hollywood making movies seemed a long ways away. There was no YouTube. There was no professional cameras that actually looked halfway decent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But a friend of mine got me into radio and then gave me a foot in the door to a TV station there doing news. And my first job, and it makes me seem really ancient, I promise I'm not that old, but my first job was retyping stories in a teleprompter.
Okay.
Because news stories were written on typewriters at the time.
Yeah.
Typewriters in the newsroom, and this is 1996 maybe?
Yeah, okay.
And they would write them on what were called Q sets. They had carbon in between the sheets, and one would get handed to me, and I would have to retype it on a Commodore 64 on a floppy disk, and then walk that disk into the studio, load it into the prompter, and roll prompter and run studio camera.
Wow.
That was kind of my first job, but I befriended the sports guy, and he put a camera in my hands. I started shooting high school football games and basketball games.
And what city was this in?
This is in Binghamton, New York.
Binghamton, okay.
And that led to getting another job in TV news, and with that you kind of have to move from a small market to a medium market to a large market. So then I go to South Florida, and I work that's where the photojournalist name really came from, because we were following this ethos that was the NPPA, National Press Photographers Association, that was really trying to elevate TV news stories to be more artful, to be more character-driven, and not, unfortunately, what you see a lot on the news right now, which is just talking heads.
Yeah.
So we were following that, and along with that went a title of photojournalist.
Yeah, which is cool.
It was cool. Yeah. And I think it gave us a value as the co-creators of stories, and you gave us more of an editorial just say in how things were done. And at that station, I learned so much. This is in Fort Myers, Florida. Really great group of folks we were working with that all cared about trying to do the best we could. And then everybody scattered, and some went to Phoenix or
different
Denver and I ended up in San Francisco. Or I ended up in San Jose actually working for the NBC. It was NBC 11 at the time.
Okay,
But I came in right as the changeover from Cron, who had been NBC forever, and now this little San Jose station was getting the affiliation. So it was a nutty time to be moving across the country. And then walking into this station that also followed that same idea of really valuing cinematography and television news and bringing those stories to people. So we started doing documentaries.
So when you were you shooting mainly doing video then, or was it still photography as well?
No, it was all video,
okay.
but it was still called photojournalist.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the weird part.
Yeah.
Started doing some documentaries for NBC.
So a little bit more long form than the run and gun type thing. So not going to the corner, getting the...
Still doing some of that, but trying to move more into the longer form stuff.
Yeah. Is that where you met Dana?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I met Dana Nachman. And she had a great gig of being the producer for a lot of these more long form just pieces that had budget where you could travel a little bit.
Okay,
like everybody wanted to work with Dana.
Yeah, okay.
And we got partnered up one day, and it really just went from there and just started. She'd just been tasked with doing a documentary about the 1 year anniversary of September 11th.
Okay.
Because as you know, a lot of people, One Fillet was coming to San Francisco, and a lot of local people were on it.
Yeah.
And she'd been given this assignment to do it for the 1 year anniversary of September 11th. And I told her about my love of documentary. She's like, well, you should do it with me.
Yeah, cool.
And it started like that. And,
Yeah.
and it's crazy that we're now, 20 some years on.
Yeah.
And we've, both done a lot together and separately.
So when you were when you started working on the radio and then you met the sports guy, were you already thinking in terms of like profiles and stories and where did that come from? Was that something you always thought as a kid, or were you thinking Hollywood movies, more like fiction type stories, or what was going on in your head back in those early days so long ago?
So long ago. Well, my father was a big news junkie.
Okay.
And so I think the news was always on, in this idea, even though we're in a small town in, rural New York, about looking at the world a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And so I was interested in that. And then around the time I was probably 12 years old, VCRs were the thing, and I rented a movie called The Thin Blue Line.
Okay.
It's a movie by Errol Morris, documentary. Mm-hmm. Then it helped, I don't know how I even would have heard this story back then, but I'm sure that I did. It's a story about the murder of a police officer in Texas. Yeah. And the film helped get the man that had been convicted of it freed from prison.
Okay.
And so I heard about that. I watched this movie, and I was like, oh, my God, this is the power of film. You could help do this. So the activism part of me was there pretty early on.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how to get from where I was to doing something like that. And that's where the news business came in. Yeah,
well, that's interesting. That was kind of, pivotal for you when you think in terms of then you did Witch Hunt. Yeah. Right? Which was kind of about people being wrongly accused and kind of like that activism type thing and So what would you say? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say Witch Hunt is an interesting film. I believe it came out in 2008. Dana and I started working on it while we were still at NBC. We followed the California Innocence Project through this case of a man named John Stoll, who was convicted of horrible crimes against children in the early 80s. And we followed him through his ultimate exoneration. And we did that series for NBC Bay Area. And it won an Emmy, and that was great. And then we knew the key character, this man John Stoll, a bit, and he told us about all these other people that were also rounded up as part of the same thing. Yeah. And we went back to our bosses at NBC, and we were like, I think we've done enough. It's not really in our coverage area. It was down in Bakersfield. So that's what we're like, well, maybe we should write a book about it. And Dana and I both realized we don't know how to write a book. but
make a movie.
But maybe it would be a documentary. And so we just started doing it on nights and weekends, financing it with our credit cards. And it ended up turning into, a film that really changed our lives because we got connected to Sean Penn through that movie and went to a huge film festival in Toronto with it and ended up selling it and started to really figure out what the film business was because of that. And
so prior to that film, did either of you guys have experience kind of doing independent documentary film, or this was you guys just jumped in with this?
Yeah, I had one experience.
Okay.
Scott Budman, who was my friend at NBC, the business and tech guy for many, many years now, he and I decided to try our hand making a film.
Was that the Sound?
That was Sound Man. Yeah. And we, again, did it in our spare time and slid it to Mike Rabel at Cinequest, and he agreed to program it in 2005. Yeah, so that was the first time I'd ever seen anything I'd done with a group of people. And because of that experience, I think it pushed us to, with Dana, to say, hey, let's do Witch Hunt. I know something about how to make a movie now.
Yeah.
And
what was your role in Soundman? What was kind of your role in that first kind of one?
Scott and I co-directed it and produced. We didn't even know what the titles meant, to be honest.
Just do everything, right?
Yeah. But I shot it and I edited it too. Yeah. So kind of everything. And I'll never forget the first time the lights went down here in San Jose, watching that with an audience.
Oh, yeah.
And seeing those images come up, that is my boyhood dream come true. It still is a really memorable experience.
Yeah, that's cool. So, I wonder, so there's the part of telling the stories and then seeing the power of film, how it could change lives. And then also somewhat of working, especially on a documentary, right? It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And then having it click and the
projector starts. I mean, nowadays it doesn't have that romantic click with the film going. But
no, but I like it. I like where you're going.
yeah. And so that must be a little bit of addictive in itself, right? That kind of
absolutely, because I think one of the hard things about TV news when I started doing that, and now when you like sell a movie to streaming, is you don't get any interaction in there with an audience.
Right.
So the theatrical experience is so important. Not just for our filmmaker egos, but just to see, did anything I do here connect?
Yeah.
Or is it just more stuff going out into the void?
Yeah.
And film festivals are really the only place that independent filmmakers can do that now. There's not much of a theatrical distribution business anymore post-COVID. So I think festivals even become more important right now.
Yeah. So would you say that if there's someone who's looking to get into film, and especially documentaries, to submit them to film fests and try to get in that? I mean, have you seen like the value of even the network of other filmmakers, and has that been beneficial?
Absolutely. It is. We have a bit of a joke about film festival friends because you go through this very intense thing together, and you go to all these like directors' breakfasts and all of these things. And there's very few follow-ups typically after that. You get a lot of cards, but then there aren't, probably like many other businesses and conferences. But there are some, and there are some that are still with me today that are folks we met, here at Cinequest 15 years ago. So I think it's great for that, and I encourage young filmmakers to take every one of those opportunities that comes along. And just the connections you make there could be incredibly valuable. It's kind of like a finishing school. If you already have got the gumption to go make a movie, now you got to meet the audience and get that feedback, good or bad, from them, because it can. You shouldn't make your movie necessarily for how an audience will perceive it, because that's always going to be like a chasing your tail exercise. But you should start to get a feel for how an audience really takes in your work. It's different. And one big thing that I've tried to learn over many years and many films is it's different than a home experience, or what we used to do for TV news, where the information is really first. You have a narrator many times getting you through it, and a TV reporter. With film, it's more about taking your time, letting the images really speak. And for me, that's been one big evolution. I hope.
Well, let's talk about. I mean, there's so many different things I want to talk about, but let's talk about even just the process of doing a documentary and what it takes to be there with the camera and with the crew, and then getting the story with like the difference in your approach, even like what's the Residence one's theory of obscurity?
Theory of obscurity. Yeah.
Like how much and are you going in kind of with the? I mean, you probably go in with a kind of little preconceived notion, but then also a story evolves, right? So what's some of your I don't even know experience with that? I don't even have a question. Just ramble about that kind of like
truly,
experience.
They're all so different. I think if you go back to the beginning with Witch Hunt, we knew that there were these people that were arrested for these crimes. And we knew that almost all of them had been ultimately exonerated and released, and were trying to get their lives back together. But you don't know. So it's sort of the broad strokes, but how do the dots connect? And what are the relationships that come out of it? And I think one of the biggest things we learned on that is about the generational ruin that was created because of these cases, and in many of them, the children, like people's own children, had to testify against them. And now that had just done damage to their lives, and it's frayed their relationships with their kids now. And so many things emerge from it. Theory of Obscurity, a very different film about this avant-garde band called The Residents that is a Bay Area legendary band. It was just a conversation had over a couple of beers, and I didn't know too much about them, but one of my friends, Josh Keppel, did, and we set about making this, and it could have gone so many ways. I think there are such ardent fans of this band. It could have been a really inaccessible fans-only film.
Sure.
It could have been
a cult classic.
An unseen cult classic. But what I found when we got in there and started doing interviews, and I got to know, one of the mysteries of the band is nobody knows who the members are.
Randy or
it's Randy Rose for a time,
and then there's Flynn or something like that too, right?
Well, there's the Cryptic Corporation are the managers of the residents, and Homer Flynn works for the Cryptic Corporation.
Flynn, which is obviously, I don't know.
You're not going to get any secrets revealed from me.
Okay.
But it's this kind of thing. Once you get in there and start peeling back some layers, I wanted to play with this idea of identity and who these folks might be, and what the point is, I guess, of, and maybe this is the news guy in me. I always kind of got to get to the point.
Yeah.
Of creating a legacy of creating art without celebrity. And in our culture where it seems like celebrity before output, I thought that was a really interesting way to approach their story.
Yeah. It is interesting to have a creative endeavor and yet keeping yourself, your own personal life detached from that, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can do it in short bursts, but to do it over a 40-plus year career, now a 50-year career, is quite extraordinary. And to stick to that plan, to never at once say like, okay, I'm going to go make my hit song. I think it's really commendable. So it's looking for things like that in each one. And to me, it's what makes it really hard. If you're trying to get grant money or investor money to make these, they generally now want to know every beat of the story.
Right.
And what I've learned over the years is just lie, make it up. Because
so to get funding, just lie.
Just lie, because you have no idea what path it's going to take.
Right.
And anybody who says different is just full of it.
So you're not saying lying. You're saying come in with a determined mission and direction, right? But knowing that it could pivot.
Right. Leaving that door. I think, one of the people from the Sundance Institute told me one time is, tell me a good story. I want to see it on paper, what you think a good story is. But we all know, if we're in this business at all, that it's going to change. Things, good, bad, and it's going to move around. But present your ideal version of the story and get us to buy into that.
Yeah, that's cool. So doing which, and then it was narrated by Sean Penn. So which, and then of course you went on to do the over like 10 years, kind of like documenting his life with the relief in Haiti and stuff like that, right? And I don't want to talk about him because people know him, but I'm kind of curious of the in the industry of film and what you're doing, and with even like Dana and some other people and then your friends, how important is it that like that network and exploring and the finding stories through your network? What has been your experience with that?
Well, for me, ideas for stories have never been the problem.
Okay.
I mean, again, maybe goes back to the news training that I'm able to get interested in things pretty quickly and say like, well, what is going on with that? Is that something that could be explored more?
Do you think even to hold that? Are you even like the type of person who could be hired by somebody and then you could figure out and find like, oh yeah, this is really interesting, even though it's maybe wouldn't be something you would.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's a lot of stories that kind of come that way where somebody else says, what do you think about this? And then I love doing the research and actually seeing, is there enough here? Is the right format for it, a feature-length documentary, or maybe it's short-form docs, or maybe it's a podcast. Who knows? But there's so many good stories out there that I do believe need to be told, and it's just figuring out how to do it, where will the money come from, and is there anybody that wants to distribute it? Those are, to me, the big problems, or the big question marks.
So then you haven't really had the problem of like, the stories, but then talk about those like relationships that have helped your career.
Yeah, I think like most filmmakers, you have a small group around you always that you either bounce ideas off of or directly collaborate with, and you keep them for a long time because I'm not in any way comparing myself to like Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino, but there's a reason on every one of their movies they pretty much work with the same people. You need to develop that shorthand. There's virtually no easy part of this process, and you got to have folks with you that you can really trust and lean on in those tough times, and just be in the foxhole with. Because there's never enough money. There's never enough, crew. You're always going to need people to do more than probably their job title says they're going to. And just be there.
Yeah. Do you think some of that skill set, I mean, coming up through kind of like TV and journalism is kind of shaped the way that maybe you approach doing a documentary, or what would you say? Versus, I mean, in some ways, compare yourself to maybe somebody who hasn't done that, and you've noticed some differences in yourself? Or
I have. It's a really good question, because I think the news business background has helped and also hurt, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's helped because I know I can shoot, I can edit, I can produce, I can pick up a camera and go pretty much make a movie.
Yeah.
At least get it to post and the color and sound mixing and scoring and all of that. But I can do a lot of the jobs. So that sometimes creates a problem, because you jump into things without really thinking, is this
the best use of your time?
Is this the best use of time? Is this something that you want to devote the next couple of years of your life to?
Yeah, totally.
Where I think folks that come from more of a film school background, they know that there's different jobs. They know, there's going to be an AD on set. There's going to be craft services. I'm like, wow, that's an interesting thing. I have a granola bar. I
was going to say, in documentaries, do they have craft services?
Apparently they do. I've heard this. I've never experienced it, but it may cause you to have a bigger network, a bigger crew.
Sure.
And that necessitates more money, which means it's got to be more well planned out.
Yeah.
I would say for our first couple of films, our naivete was super helpful to get Sound Man and Witch Hunt done. The one after that is called Love, Hate, Love that Dana and I made with the little bit of profit we made on Witch Hunt. We were like, I think it was a smart move ultimately.
Yeah.
We're like, let's not wait. Let's reinvest some of that money and let's go make another movie.
Yeah.
Because what we realized from being on the film festival circuit is it takes a long time. And the more time you're gone, you're out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
So if we get another movie that's into the system, then it establishes us more as we're here to stay. We're going to keep making these. We're going to be back out with another film the following year.
Yeah.
And that did help us to a point.
Yeah.
But we also decided to go shoot this movie. It's sort of like the band. That the first album is like this really homemade.
Because you put everything into it. Your whole life is this drop, and then you have production for the next one coming.
Yeah, and then the next one is like, let's not go to Bakersfield where we shot that. Let's instead go all over the world to make this movie.
Yeah.
And I'm still very proud of it, but it was super hard because we shot in Australia and in Bali and Uganda. We went all over the place.
Bigger budget, yeah.
Yeah, but not that much bigger, and because we still did 90% of the jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
And that allows you, I think that put it on credit cards, put it self-finance, allows you to make one kind of movie. Mm-hmm. And that was not the right kind of movie. The going all over the world type movie is very hard to do that way. But I do still think it was a sound theory. It just maybe we should have said, let's do something a little more intimate, like at least.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know that until after you did it.
No, exactly.
The wisdom comes through experience. Yeah.
Sure.
So I want to kind of get back to these because I see like your kind of connection with. Well, you've talked about the sports guy kind of gave you that, and then Dana you kind of like met at the job, and then the Sean Penn connection, which is I'm not sure how you guys got together, but then he did the voice. The narration
and executive produced Witch Hunt, yes.
Right. And then it seemed like because of that, then that got you kind of a connection with Linda Perry from Four Non-Blondes, which is you just released kind of her story.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is that, and then...
Kind of, yes. I mean, there's also, some years in there, but yeah.
Also, too, with that, I was curious, too, with Love, Hate, Love, because some of the music is U2.
Yeah.
Where I'm thinking like, okay, you have to pay for the rights for that. So was that like through some of these connections that becomes because
sort of, but it's two things, and that's some good research on Love, Hate, Love, because it's really it's a tougher film to find right now, and we can talk about streaming. And,
I want to talk about distribution.
But yeah, we again naivete of in Witch Hunt we end the film with a song from Pearl Jam. We ended up getting that through just cold calling the fan club. We didn't know about managers and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But come to find out, Pearl Jam's fan club is very close to the band. we found a person there that just liked the idea, got it right to Eddie Vedder, the lead singer of the band, and they just gave us the song for like $500.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So we have to up the ante with Love Hate Love, and we're going to go get Bruce Springsteen, Radiohead, and U2.
Yeah.
And we got it all gratis.
Yeah, awesome.
Which is now knowing what I do, it's unbelievable that we were able to do that.
Yeah.
But it's because I think Sean Penn helped a little bit, but it's really just because of us calling the manager, and largely this was Dana. This is the Dana Nachman magic that I will always talk about.
Yeah.
Of just calling and being honest and earnest and saying, we have this movie, we would love to use this song, here's why. And they went for it. And sometimes with really big artists like that, they have so much power over their label and over ownership of their catalog that they can say, let them use it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we had to pay, again, it was the $500 a track kind of thing. But to use the entirety of a U2 song, if we were a big production, it would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So, it's
it's going to go.
Again, you feel so fortunate. I don't think that would ever happen now.
Yeah.
Somewhat because of just how documentaries are seen as more profit motivated now than they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But also the labels have really realized that we're not giving anything away.
Yeah, because they're hurting to figure out their model for business
allegedly,
as well.
I don't know. You see their quarterly profits. I don't know.
I mean, okay, so you kind of talked about Dana's secret sauce. I guess she's kind of like the phone caller, make it happen, maybe the spreadsheet type person. What's your secret sauce? What would you say is like your unique gift that you bring? Maybe, I mean, you have multiple.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
No, in those early years, I think, I was much more the technical guy. And I would know all of the cameras and how to edit it and be up to date on all the software and stuff. And Dana was much more the front person.
Okay.
She was going out there, making the calls, identifying the characters. And those are kind of the roles we had when we were at NBC.
Yeah.
Over the past, 6-7 years, we've sort of gone our own ways. We're still very much friends and support each other, but I have moved more into that setup guy role.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It also makes it harder for me to do some of the things I love. I don't shoot as much anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't edit as much anymore.
Yeah.
I become kind of the finishing editor for our projects, but I'm not the guy that can sit in the chair 5 days a week, 10 hours a day and make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's the trade-off.
Yeah.
And it's still a balancing act.
Yeah.
I try to carve out 2 days a week that are going to be just edit days, and then 3 days that are phone calls and other development stuff. But it's evolving. Yeah. And then I think on her side, she's got a good team around her, a great producer she works with on everything, and so we're still figuring it out. I think it goes back to your question about that network and having those people that you trust and
a team. Would you say then for funding, then have you moved more into the role of kind of trying to be the fundraiser and getting the you know what I mean? Because I think it's totally a different skill set or approach when you're setting up gear, right, and you're shooting, versus then going to ask, I have this idea for this project and I need, $1 million.
It is different, and it is more challenging. You can't be the guy there working the camera and also taking the time that you really need to with investors. We've found over the years, money in a lot of different places. I think probably the funniest was my dentist, who was asking me about his investment while he's like drilling in my mouth. But an interesting thing about the Bay Area is there's not a lot of people here trying to make movies. Yeah. So that over the 20 years of doing this has made us more special. We're not going in there with a tech idea, because everybody's got one of those.
Right. Yeah.
But we're going in there and we're saying, we have this movie or this idea for a movie. We think the subject matter might appeal to you, and then you put it together and you make people try to understand the economics of it, and you learn what they're hoping to get out of it. Yeah. If you want to make millions of dollars back, then you don't want to invest in documentary film. Yeah. But if you believe in the idea, you want to see the idea move forward. If you want to show up and walk some red carpets, if you want to do things like that, that experience we can offer you. Yeah. So it's understanding that investor psychology that has been a really big growth experience for me over all of these years. I think when we started out, as I mentioned, we did putting it on our own credit cards,
Right.
and then you can only hit up friends and family, maybe twice.
Yeah, right.
Maybe
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah.
And then they see you like walking red carpets, and they're like, "Hey, I gave you money. Look at it."
Yeah.
So that the optics are bad. And then you can try grants
Yeah.
and donations, and that can work, but it's
Yeah.
a really long process.
Yeah.
And there's so many people applying that we've had some success, but it does come down to private equity investors
Yeah.
and understanding what they might want out of it, and then just having those conversations. And
Yeah.
we've been very fortunate. Two people in particular have been just great over the past several projects and really believed in what we're doing, even though it's become a very tricky. Making docs has never been easy, but I think right now, maybe more than ever, it's hard post-COVID to
Okay.
figure out where films are going to land.
Yeah.
We had a great theatrical experience with our film Pick of the Litter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where we went into theaters all over the country, really all over the world.
Yeah.
We even went and did screenings in Abu Dhabi and
Oh, wow.
Dubai with
Yeah.
it, which was an incredible experience. And unfortunately, I don't think that's happening anymore. The independent theatrical distribution for
Right.
docs is non-existent.
Really.
So it's hard to add that to the possible
entice people.
to entice people to get involved
Yeah.
in them.
Yeah. So if you make a documentary, that was on Discovery or Disney, right? And then Pick of the Litter even became like a little.
It became a
mini
series for Disney
series.
Plus. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty odd that you can have a documentary and then it gets picked up by a large distributor, and then what's some of the.
It was really a dream project in
Yeah.
every way. We had this idea for Dana and I went way back to our NBC days when we had done a story on guide dogs for the blind. And, cut to 10 years later, we both have been gone from NBC a long time at this point. And we're standing at Sundance, and we're like, what do you want to do next? And we're like, well, what about that guide dog idea? And we set about talking to different organizations, but we ended up working with Guide Dogs for the Blind based in Marin County. And we just started filming.
Okay.
And the setup was pretty simple. We're going to follow one litter of puppies to just see what happens on their journey to become guide dogs. Yeah. And we had no idea. I mean, again, hindsight is always 20/20. We could have ended up with nothing after 2 years. If all of the dogs didn't make it or something.
Yeah.
So there were some frantic moments in there where we would be calling each other like, did we just make a huge mistake?
Could have been an interesting story, though, in some ways. I mean, everybody says that failure's okay. So what if you did all these dogs?
But all five of them? I think about the organization would have been furious. They'd be like, you can't go out with this. And, and our investor, we couldn't have been like, well, I guess we got to start over. Could we have more money, please? So there was a lot. It was a roll of the dice. And then we ended up premiering it at the Slam Dance Film Festival. It did run at the same time as Sundance in Park City. And we just took over the town. We had dogs everywhere. There were dogs in the theater, the dogs walking up Main Street. And very quickly we realized it was becoming a thing. Yeah. And we were so fortunate to have this multi-offer bidding war that you hear about in the lore of Sundance. We had it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
And
awesome.
it was great that we ended up going with IFC Films, and they so strongly believed in it. They were really big dog people. Yeah. Put it in and committed to significant money to put it into theaters and believed in that experience. It was so cool.
Yeah.
And then months later, the story as we got it was Bob Iger, the head of Disney, is rolling down the street, or somebody sent him a trailer just as they were starting the Disney Plus platform. And somebody sent him the trailer, and he's like, "Dogs are great. I love dogs." And that started this whole experience of selling our IP in the film, and then being attached as executive producers on this series.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. And then we fought really hard. The last part of this is we fought really hard to keep the production in the Bay Area.
Okay.
Because they wanted it to all be done out of LA.
Sure.
And we're like, but the story's here. It's in Marin.
Yeah.
We live here. Why? And there's great crew here.
Yeah.
Why can't we keep this show here?
Yeah,
and we got them to buy into it, and we did. We set up our own production spaces in Oakland, and a few people came up from LA, but pretty much everybody was local. And I'm just really, really proud of that.
Yeah,
because
that's cool.
It's not easy to convince. So we had power for one moment as filmmakers, and we used it.
Yeah. So then because you have a couple that you have the docuseries with the Pick of the Litter, but then also Home.
The Way Home?
The Way Home.
Yeah.
That's because that was a series as well, right?
Yeah.
Were they with, actually, I don't know the distribution of the two. Were
Sure.
they through the same channels or through the same connection?
Totally
or how did
different.
Did one spark the idea for the other as far as doing it as a kind of like series?
Only in that I think the relative power that we had because Pick of the Litter was gaining some attention led me to conversations with Kaiser Permanente, who was looking to do something on homelessness. This is 2019, I believe, and it's when a lot of the big tech companies were putting significant money into homelessness.
Yeah.
And Kaiser was leading the way on that, and they had this idea to, is there a way to document this? And so because of the strength of Pick of the Litter, I think that's what got me the meeting.
Yeah.
And we went in there and just talked about what could we do. Obviously, homelessness is something we all encounter in the Bay Area every day. I live in Alameda, 10 minutes away, in Oakland, big camps. And so we just started talking about what could we do here? What is the right format for it? And we landed on this idea of doing short 10 to 12 minute films and do them as a series. Like the first season is 4 episodes, second season 4 episodes, third season is 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And didn't know at the time, but the first season ends up being before the pandemic. Second season is during, and third season is as we start to recover.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of the show. It's underseen. It's all on YouTube now, so people can watch it for free. What we realized once we got into making it and trying to sell it or distribute it, we weren't even really looking for money back from it. I mean, it was a nice thing.
Yeah, with Kaiser, right?
Yeah.
So in some ways, it was almost like a corporate story
Kind
film in a way.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
But we were fortunate, and I really credit them for allowing us to do this. They funded the project, but asked for no editorial control.
Oh.
Which is so rare.
Do people do that?
They did here.
And your dentist.
Yes, and my dentist. But they let us go follow the stories where it leads. And if you watch it, Kaiser Permanente isn't even really mentioned until the credits.
Yeah.
It's not like it's all about their doctors and this is what we're doing in the community. It's a real solid documentary series.
Yeah.
So I give them all kinds of credit for that because I know just how rare it is to be able to step back and say, it's about the information, not about like the brand awareness part.
Yeah. Yeah, to educate and to tell people so they can look at homelessness in a different way.
Yeah, and to realize the only way to tell that story, because it isn't one that, say, Netflix is going to come in and finance. It's not sexy enough for that. Yeah. It's not. The only way to tell the story of homelessness with solid production value that can really hopefully break out and reach people is to have significant funding and funding that doesn't have to be paid back.
Right.
And that's what we were able to do because of their support.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, it's for a good cause too.
Yeah.
So then I kind of think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, your new film, Bar, which is about the beverage, alcohol resources, right? It's the Culinary Institute in New York.
It's
right?
held at the Culinary Institute. Yeah.
That's kind of like Pick of the Litter in a way, isn't it?
Right?
I mean, you have
we
some
replace
people...
dogs with bartenders.
Right, yeah. So that's going to be your thing where you come into a competition. So give us a little bit about this Bar that's going to be coming out at Cinequest.
Sure. Bar is the story of the Bar 5-day program.
Just real quick on that, has that program already been going on? Or
yeah, it's been going on since 2005.
Okay, 2005.
Where these really
mixologists or
important bartenders in the history of the craft cocktail revolution decided to come together. So some were writers. One guy, Dale DeGroff, is probably the most famous bartender in the world. He ran the Rainbow Room in New York for 30 years, created the Cosmopolitan. Dale is a big deal. But all of these folks, David Wondrich literally wrote the book on the history of cocktails. Okay. So they all decided to come together and say, how can we best spread the information that we know to make a more informed hospitality group of people?
Sure.
So they started this and have been pretty successful. They're graduates of this program, run all the best bars in the country, run spirits brands, are leading the non-alcoholic revolution, all of this stuff. Yeah. So I got connected to them through one of the graduates who ended up being a friend of a friend. Noticing a theme here with all of my stuff is like just conversations that lead to other conversations that then 2 years of your life. But we had a little bit of money and a crew that was waiting for our story in our other film. It's called Linda Perry, Let It Die Here, that premiered last year.
Yeah.
We were waiting for some elements of that story to resolve. There was a lot going on in Linda's life. And for those that don't know, Linda was the lead singer of the band Four Non Blondes back in the 90s. And then she became a writer and producer for other people's works like Brandi Carlile and Pink and Christina Aguilera. So we were making that film and waiting. But I had crew and a little bit of money, and then this idea comes through the door for Bar. So we say, let's try this ambitious idea of can we make 85% of a documentary in 5 days.
Okay.
Again, should have my head examined, but
yeah.
It led us into pre-production, and then we landed in Hyde Park, New York, as this starts.
Yeah,
and the film
kind of makes sense though, because it's a class. It's over 5 days. 5 days, right? So it does make sense, because if you have a limited time, normally a documentary you're going to be following a story for a long time. So so then you land there.
We land there, and at this point we've done our pre-production, so we have an idea of who our 5 main characters are, but also trying to leave room for surprises.
Yeah.
And we just go through this week. We had a big crew because it goes from 7 a.m. to like 1 in the morning. So we had shifts of people.
Yeah, wow.
And we just go through it. And we show the pressure cooker that is learning a whole ton of dense information in a few days that culminates with testing, where the bartenders have to make 6 drinks in 10 minutes in front of the masters in the trade.
Yeah.
And hopefully viewers get invested in their stories, and in the next time they're sitting across the table ordering a drink, have a little more respect and understanding. I think that's my biggest goal for the film. And it's a throwback in a way to the early 2000s. There was a string of docs that were really important to me, like Spellbound and Mad Hot Ballroom and Wordplay, that were windows into these worlds.
Right.
But did have a competition factor to it. So I think that's what we were trying to do here, while also leaning into it's edited really fast, like The Bear.
Yeah.
We use sound in an interesting way, more so than many documentaries.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great theatrical experience where hopefully people will be rooting for who's going to pass, who's going to fail. Yeah. There's some surprises in there. But also get just a greater appreciation for the hospitality industry and people that are really trying to do it at a high level.
Yeah. That's totally, it's different. It's interesting to see the different documentaries that you've worked on, the different themes. You know what I mean? So in some ways, this is the lightest, hardest.
Possibly.
Well,
maybe The Resident.
That's just avant-garde, I guess, right? Yeah, that's good. Cool. Then what for you, what is kind of like your own personal philosophy of life? How do you approach just your life in general, from work to your family to?
I don't know. It's a good question. And sometimes you think you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other and figure it out like everybody else. But I guess if I had to do a little soul searching, I would say, very curious about the roads other people take.
Yeah, okay.
And whether that's Linda Perry, a very established artist who's at a crossroads in her life. So much of docs is where you come into the story.
Yeah.
And in the case of the Linda Perry film, we come in at where there's a time of big change, where she's trying to figure out, was 57, I believe, at the time. Like, where is am I on the right path? What is my legacy? And I guess in some ways that dovetails with what I'm thinking. Both Linda and I lost parents during the making of this, and I see a lot of myself in her, even though we're very different people. And I would say with The Residents, too, or even the Sean Penn film, it's that questioning, it's that curiosity, and in the case of Sean Penn, his decision to go to Haiti and try to do some good.
Right.
He didn't do it for the photo op.
Right.
So it was actually one of the biggest challenges of making that film was getting him to
buy
into it, because it wasn't why he went there.
Yeah.
Because I knew him from Witch Hunt, I volunteered to go there and just shoot some footage, and we pushed it out to CNN and all the other platforms just to show what was going on there in 2010. Yeah. But then I just kept going and salting footage away, and I do some videos to help his organization raise money. And, but he would never agree to do it because it's just everybody has an opinion.
It's a counter to being humanitarian and just giving, than to gloat it and post it. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he everybody has an opinion on Sean, and what I've seen over the 15 or so years of knowing him is he really doesn't go for that limelight, but he does recognize the power of his name and presence, and so he has access to a lot of things that regular people don't.
Sure. Yeah.
But he tries to use those powers for good, opposed to what I see in a lot of other people, which it's all about themselves making more money and Yeah.
So then your kind of philosophy for life is I didn't get it.
I don't know.
Just curious, tell the stories, know what other people are walking in their moccasins or something.
Yeah, and to try to paint accurate portraits of people with honesty and integrity. And I'm really proud of the fact that, going way back to, say, Witch Hunt, I'm still pretty friendly with a lot of the people. We don't check in every day anymore. Sure. But I hear other stories of filmmakers that are either being deceptive with their cast or just keeping them completely in the dark and until their story is on the air. I've just never agreed with that. So I try to handle things that way. Yeah. And and try to, when I'm home, when I'm not traveling, I try to be as present as possible. Yeah. Maybe my wife would disagree with that, but especially over the past, say, 5 or 10 years, I've tried to put more value into that.
Yeah, I mean, the life of doing documents, I don't know why I'm missing, but making documentary films. I mean, there's a lot of travel time. Yeah. Yeah. I guess maybe
it is all consuming. It really can be. So trying to find a little bit of, I guess the term is work-life balance with it all. Totally. It is hard because
it's
documentaries exist on their own timeline. Like, they don't care if you have concert tickets that night. Like, it's gonna happen then. Or think that's fairly trivial, but you got a big trip home planned. Well, here's when your story is gonna change. Then
for you, what story have you what story do you want to tell? Like, what do you think, oh man, if I can get an opportunity? I mean, I know you're probably have it written in a thing and you don't want people to know about it because someone else will jump on that idea. So if you don't want to, but what is it man, I really want to expose this or reveal this or illustrate. What do you think it is?
I have some big bucket ideas. Probably the one that I come back to the most often is Tom Waits. Just being a huge fan, and I feel like he's such an interesting story to tell. So that's one that's been on my bucket list for a long time. Yeah, cool. There's a true crime project about a man who was tried 4 times for the murder of his wife that I've been developing for a while. Yeah. And I think it is an interesting twist on the true crime obsession that we have. So there are a lot of different things. Yeah. It's an interesting time for documentaries because there's the more tried and true sort of ideas. And if you want to do this as a business that pays your bills, you have to go in some of those directions, but hopefully keep your core idea of why you're there and how you'll do it. So, think of true crime, music, the celebrity stuff. Yeah. But I always try to have a different spin on it. I think if you watch the Linda Perry film, and I've been really heartened by the reviews it's received. Hopefully everybody will get to see it soon. We're working on the distribution part now. But the reviews that come out about it being raw, the most honest music documentary in a long time, that's so great to hear. Because that's the way it was done. Yeah. It was done with that idea in mind. It isn't manufactured. It's not super shiny. In fact, she calls me every now and then and be like, you could have made me look a little bit better.
It's too raw.
It's a little bit, you could have made me look a little bit better. Yeah. So I feel like that's doing good. And so a lot of ideas, but these are the few that are always kind of kicking around in my brain. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. And then, so just let us know, Bar at Cinequest. What's the dates that it's showing? I think it's got 2 different show times.
Yeah, the world premiere of Bar is March 14th at 7:10 p.m., I believe, at the California Theater. So please come out and help us fill it. It's a beautiful room. Yeah. We're going to have a lot of people from the film there, some world-class bartenders in town.
Right. And, are they going to be making some drinks in the lobby for us?
I hope so, yeah. I'm talking to the Cinequest people about how much we can take it over. But, I think that would be great. And it's a fun film to watch in the theater. I think right now we all need a bit of a break from reality. I think I speak for us all saying that we could use a little escapism. Yeah. And in this film, it's a fun movie. It's, somebody, I think it was one of Dana's kids said one time, like, do you ever want to make a movie people want to see? Which is a great kid answer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like, Mommy, why do you make really hard to watch documentaries? Yeah. So this is a pretty enjoyable one. Yeah. You're gonna walk out of there hopefully with a smile on your face and have learned a little bit about this community that we come in contact with every day. Whether you're in a restaurant, a bar, a hotel, anything.
Yeah. And what's your favorite drink now after doing this film?
Oh, geez, favorite drink. Well, I'm a big fan of the Paper Plane, which is a very easy 4-part drink and a bar here in town. So I like those a lot of good old fashions. You don't have to make it smoked up and all of that like they do now, but just a good old fashioned. Yeah. How about you?
I actually am not really a cocktail guy.
No?
Yeah. But old fashioned is nice. Yeah. I'm more
just straight shots.
Yeah, just straight
pounded shots.
Yeah. I'm kind of like I'm not a big I don't really like the taste of whiskey.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think that's why the non-alcoholic stuff is rising so quickly, is a lot of people are sort of making a health decision, but also, what am I getting out of that taste?
Yeah, cool. Okay, so March 14th.
World premiere, and then the follow-up screening is the following Sunday, the 23rd.
The 23rd. And then are you going to be doing kind of like Q&A after at the California? Or
Q&A at both.
Awesome. So we can meet you
it might just be me solo for the second one. But I'll see who's still in town. Yeah. Maybe we'll have some local folks join. But on Friday night, the 14th, it's going to be, we'll have just about everybody from the cast and crew there. So.
Well, congratulations on your career, your Emmys. I didn't get to your 7 Associated Press Awards, your 15 National Photography Associate Awards, the San Francisco Photographer of the Year. I didn't get to all those kind of credits or lists of the movies, but thank you for your time and for what you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Todd. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the South Bay creatives. This episode's music is 408 by Jack Pavlina. Follow him on Spotify and also on his Instagram at Jack Pavlina Music.